Welcome back to another episode of Offensively Accurate, hosted by yours truly, Atlas Thugged, aka White Boy Deep Voice, however you find me, whichever moniker, whether you find me through TikTok, Instagram, X, YouTube, don't matter. Here to give you the most base Christian takes that's allowed on YouTube, although I do push the limit quite a bit. Please forgive the casual appearance. My power was out earlier. It's been one rough day. I didn't get it back until around like 3 o'clock, 3:30. So, a warm shower didn't come until then. So to get things started though, you probably read the title, RFK and Trump, obviously shockwaves through the entire industry. We're already seeing the media peel back in an attempt to ensure that they can poison the well with some of these articles that we'll get into. Another crazy thing too is the fact that the Shroud of Turin has also, for one, it's being dubbed as like the greatest discovery in mankind, which I also think that too. But to see it shockingly kind of disappear from the news cycle almost in a matter of like a couple of days is kind of disturbing, but again, not shocked at the way that it's going down. We'll get into a bit of that. Michael Knowles did a great discussion, not only on his own show on his own, but he invited Timothyology, who was a Roman Catholic, who had a bit more kind of historical backing to this, showing evidence and stuff like that too. We're not going to watch that one. We're going to watch a bit of the Michael Knowles one. And outside of that too, we have a couple other smaller news pieces as well. Breaking, actually, right before I went live, I could only grab a few pieces of it, was the fact that Telegram, the founder of Telegram, is being arrested. Not sure what country he's being arrested in. But he's being arrested under the guise of not censoring content, not following the rules, as it were, in a foreign country, even though Telegram is US based, as far as I'm understanding. So, with that being said, no announcements. Again, no jar openers either. So if anybody, hopefully we can pull some people over who would have normally watched jar openers over here. So to start today, though, subscribe on YouTube, follow me on X, follow on TikTok, all that same jazz. Share the show if you enjoy it as well, and happy to see everybody in here as well too. Make sure you chat it up as well. I do enjoy engaging with you guys all the time. So to start this off, though, we're gonna go to this. And this is going to be a side point from everything else we go to, but I thought it was extremely intriguing and I find it curious as well. So we're going to watch it here in a second. They're trying to redirect sunlight. They're trying to redirect sunlight in an attempt to encourage solar farming after dark. Now, it's kind of a crazy concept when you think about it, but they use an air balloon. They actually got an air balloon up in the sky. And we're just going to watch this video in full. So go ahead and switch it over here. I do have to actually put my headphones in. I always forget this, so I apologize, guys. I'm out as bad as Nick Fuentes when it's come to being late and being ready at the start. So let me go ahead and actually switch my settings on. You're going to have to take a quick look at my settings so these AirPods connect. So I do apologize for that. If it goes, half the time it takes forever to do this. Okay, it takes 2 seconds. Connect. Let's be good. Come on now. There we go. Okay, and as always, if there's any issue with sound, please let me know. But if you can see here, this is from Brian Romele, who I do not know, but it says the satellite company wants to sell sunlight at night. Meet Reflect Orbital. They're developing a constellation of satellites to sell sunlight to thousands of solar farms after dark. So go ahead and take a quick listen to this. It's about 3.5 minutes long. I found it extremely curious. I'd like to know your thoughts on this and how realistic this could be, especially with how poor green energy is and how it turns out. Go ahead and pull this back a little bit though.
This gigantic solar farm doesn't make any power at night, and neither will any of these, but we can change that. With control over sunlight, solar energy can power the world forever. The Russians launched a reflector satellite in the 1990s, and it worked. But we've come a long way since then. With simple satellites in the right constellation shining on existing solar farms, we can produce cheap electricity. After many design iterations, ground testing, drone testing, and talking to lots of customers, we had one last thing to build before moving on to space: the balloon test.
I'm sorry, that music is so cringe. Let me turn this down a little bit. I can't stand they blast that stuff.
We are drifting very fast east, though, so keep that in mind too. We are tracking onto Tristan with his light there, and the sun is going to rise here.
I see it, I see it, I see it. Oh yeah! Dude, I can see the beam too. Oh, we got a flash! All right, these are very noticeable spikes.
So there's Tristan standing in a sunbeam, basically right on him.
Oh my goodness. I can feel the heat actually.
Oh yeah, here we go, we're on.
We might be getting offshore readings. It's going up when you flash.
Stop moving. Nobody move at all.
It went from 58 to 120 watts.
Dude, it's literally working! Woo! Let there be light! Hell yes. All right, I'm gonna move it off for 10 seconds and then move it back on. Let's keep going. And I'm moving it back on now.
Yeah, pretty looking clear. 58 to 166.
Dude, I could just chill here all day!
All right, let's do one more square wave. Let's get that signal to noise ratio.
There you go, that's 140 watts. That does not existed before.
This is it! We're doing it, man! I'm pointing a mirror at your panels, Tristan!
So a pretty intriguing concept, although it didn't seem like they did it at night at all. I mean, obviously I can understand how that would operate though. And what is up, Knights, and as well as Kukla? Thank you all both for being here. I appreciate it. I thought it was extremely intriguing. You know, it's something I didn't really think of, although it seems to be a pretty practical idea to actually stretch this. Um, but again, as far as I understand, the kind of turnover that occurs with solar energy is just seemingly not good enough, depending on how much these panels cost. Their installation as well as the replacement costs as well. I think they have a very, very poor return on investment over a long period of time. But it was something to just think about. I don't know how to get rid of this thing. There we go. Maybe we can move somewhere with this renewable energy source. Not sure though. If it's going to be anything similar to what we see with windmills and everything of that nature. It's probably going to be a big failure. You know, I've seen a lot of these recent videos of windmills that have like just been blowing up that aren't being taken care of. They don't even come close to lasting their given, like, I think it's like 10-year time before, whether it's the turbine or a blade specifically fails. And then it's catastrophic when it actually comes to the surface and it breaks down. And that was just a side piece too. I thought it was pretty interesting to start things off with, but now we're going to get into a bit more of the actual news per se. And so one of the first leading things we have here is that actually Dr. Phil is set to interview Trump and RFK. Now, I'm not sure if it's going to be together or separate, and I'll put it on screen here. This is from Leading Report. So Dr. Phil announced he will air interviews, so I guess I'm assuming it'll be individual, with Trump and RFK next week on his television network. And once again, a big shout out to, RFK not RFK, but Dr. Phil for being involved in politics as much as he has been, especially when he has the platform that he does. I always talk about his appearance on Joe Rogan, where he broke down some of what was happening along the border, specifically talking about how they trace some of these underage victims with like permanent marker and addresses, and they'll just write it on these children. And then the BCP essentially goes like, oh, this girl needs to go to New York, and they aid in that aspect. It's I think Tim Pool is somebody who's like gone off on this a few times, and I would too. Especially because I already don't have a good opinion of how policing goes as it is, especially when you see obviously there's all those insane videos, but a systematic process like what the BCP was doing and it being that open and apparent while also being like, attacked and getting blowback from the original union leader who was a part of them. It's just like, it's really disgusting. And it makes you feel in a position where you can't support it at all. And so sure, there might be good people in the BCP who are on the border control, who are trying to do the right thing. But it's ultimately meaningless when you have like no moral foundation and you don't pay attention to politics and you just go into work and you have like no real grounding of like, what is supposed to be happening? Like, why am I being given these orders? It's just meaningless. You're just a stormtrooper at that point. But to move on this though, AF Post is actually reporting this. They're reporting that Trump actually asked RFK to be his running mate this year before settling on JD Vance after Kennedy declined. Now, I would imagine this actually has something to do with that phone call that occurred. I believe it was about a month ago. I could be wrong. Timeline seems to be moving so fast with politics the closer we get to the election. But please, could RFK please join the ticket? As many of you know, if you've followed me for a bit, I am no fan of JD Vance. I find a lot of things with him to be suspect. Even if it wasn't going to be JD Vance or RFK, I'd prefer someone like Vivek. JD Vance just has a lot of questions. I know people point out the Hillbilly Elegy in that series like that. I just didn't get the right vibes from it. When I was watching Hillbilly Elegy and reading his portions of his book, different excerpts, the feeling and vibes that I got was essentially that he had disdain for the community that he came from, and not like he cherished it or felt good about it. Now, obviously, he's speaking different to that now. With things such as like the child tax credit, so on and so forth. But this is a possibility. And maybe there is a possibility that Trump does turn down JD Vance and thus brings in RFK. I would hope so. Obviously, I think that would definitely be a broader, more apex level ticket than the current one right now. But who knows? Maybe Trump doesn't feel like he wants to, shove JD off and back onto the bench. And again, if that happens, I think JD Vance's career is essentially over at that point, outside of being attached to like a Ron DeSantis or someone else who's much more pure Republican GOP who would be going in for 2028. And with this, though, we do have a breakdown from Jimmy Dore that's pretty good. Clint Russell actually posted this clip here from Jimmy Dore. I wish this thing would disappear. And so it's pretty cool because Jimmy Dore is somebody who has, slowly been leaving the left, as it were. Somebody who has, following a journey, I guess you should say, of being constantly exposed and abused by the media lying, that he eventually has been in the position now where he's kind of politically homeless, similar to what occurred with Tim Pool. Although Jimmy Dore is still a much more leftward than where Tim Pool is currently. But again, Clint Russell thinks it's a powerful breakdown by Jimmy Dore. He's contrasting his experience at the DNC versus the Trump RFK event. And if you haven't seen it, and I don't actually have it bookmarked, but it was phenomenal. I believe it was the, I can never remember. I think it's the Foo Fighters, their song Hero. And that's what RFK walked out to. I mean, that moment was beautiful. As somebody who actually doesn't care for politics at all, as they are in the establishment format when you're trying to appeal to moderates, that moment was honestly just very, very beautiful to watch, especially because RFK does have that kind of aura to him, being from a presidential family and being involved in this for quite some time. So go ahead and take a listen to this. And again, any issues with this volume, please let me know.
And the Democratic Party is unbelievably undemocratic. That's why they have super donors, super delegates. The Republicans don't have that. That's why they use lawfare against their political opponents. The Republicans aren't doing that. Donald Trump didn't go after Hillary Clinton. He didn't lock her up. He didn't do any of that shit. Guess who's doing that? Joe Biden and the Democrats. So there's nothing to fall for. I'm sticking my head down the street and I'm reporting back what I see. That's what's happening. Not falling for anything. I'm telling you what's happening. There's a stadium full of people cheering. I just came from a stadium full of people cheering for hatred, division, and for war. They're cheering for war. They're cheering the other way. Those people were cheering for mandates, and they're cheering for censorship, and they're cheering for war and division and hating your neighbor. I just came from a stadium full of people that did that all week. And now here's a stadium full of people doing the exact opposite. So there's nothing to fall for. These are just facts. And the Democratic...
And, I think one of the top comments, I think, to this post, although I don't think it's here, it was on Jimmy Dore's actual post, was pretty accurate because it talks about the horseshoe theory. And the horseshoe theory, obviously, is, you go so far right, you end up being left, or you go so far left, you end up being right. And that's seemingly what's happened with the left wing. They've gone so far left that they are now the party of war, with the Republican establishment being way less so of that. Now, obviously, you can see these things when they're talking about dumping money to Ukraine, dumping money to Israel, which both sides want to do that, but seemingly a lot less so on the right wing. And that's why you see a lot more independents and moderates, the Aaron Rodgers and Luke Rudkowskis of the world and their audiences moving to the right. Now, obviously, that comes alongside the fact that RFK won't be there. Now, one of the more egregious things that did occur with this too, and I'll put it on screen as well, is RFK's sister thought it would be a good idea to go ahead and publicly denounce him actually moments after this occurred. And this is actually Tim Pool commenting on it. And he says, RFK having an opinion is a betrayal of no one. You're saying that stepping outside your party is a betrayal, and it's exactly the point. To you and your ilk, leaving the tribe is the crime, but lining up to attack family means nothing, proving our point about Democrats, which would be they are in lockstep, they are in a cult. You leave the cult, and now you're an apostate of the cult, right? Like now you're the worst thing. You're actually worse than the enemy at that point. And this is Kerry Kennedy. This is her personal statement here. I'll put it on screen, make it a little bit bigger. She writes, "We want an America filled with hope and bound together by a shared vision of a brighter future. A future defined by individual freedom, economic promise, and national pride. We believe in Harris and Walz. Our brother Bobby's decision to endorse Trump today is a betrayal of the values that our father and our family hold most dear. It is a sad ending to a sad story." Actually insane. But what's even more insane is if you notice on the right-hand side, 27 million views, well, I guess 26, close to 26, forgive me, I can't read. 208,000 likes. Like, that's actually kind of disturbing because it shows that the sentiment is definitely shared amongst her and her ilk, as Tim put it. But obviously 71,000 replies. People clearly weren't happy with the way that she kind of put her brother down. And you can even see some of these comments here from like Rep Lauren Boebert, I believe. You know, your brother's asking what he can do for the country. You are focused on what the country can do for you. So yes, your dad would absolutely be proud of his son. That was good. And then Blair White also saying, and I'm not a fan of Blair White by any means, your ability to betray your own brother tells us everything we need to know about which choice is the moral one in November. And to be quite honest, sitting here from my perspective, if his family was like so hell-bent on making sure that he didn't stray from the left, and the furthest he could truly go without them really kind of denouncing him was be independent, it's like, to me, that would be eye-opening in and of itself, especially if I'm putting myself in RFK's shoes. But again, you got to think too, the amount of influences that are on people at this level are just tremendous. And so who's to say that like they never really had a good relationship? So how much does this actually truly affect RFK, or did he care what their opinions were in the first place? But it does show the actual like depravity that exists on the left wing. Like, they are just, again, I'll say it again, like they are hellbent on destroying this country and ensuring things like, you know, we just saw recently with at the DNC with the free vasectomies. But I think the more glaring aspect of that was the fact that they built a monument, like they built a statue. And forgive me, I think it's of IFD device. It's the one where women insert inside of themselves to prevent pregnancies. It's like a 24-foot statue they built too. I mean, quite literally building golden calves to what they worship, which is the abortion, right? And we're going to see a bit more of that when we get into like this trolling video that I find is absolutely hilarious, because this guy infiltrated the DNC and was pretending he was a left wing or a liberal, and was getting just some absurd answers out of people with some of these questions he was asking. And I think the very opening one is asking a girl to choose between abortion or democracy. And she hesitates, and then eventually, I'm not sure if she gives the full answer, but her first answer definitely is, well, if I have to pick, you know, abortion, or she thinks she says healthcare for women, just showing that that is their golden calf. It is like, you cannot touch this. Like, women must be allowed the right to kill their own children. At least that's the way I see it. And so we'll go a little bit further though on the RFK, because this is actually an RFK voter's perspective, seeing the recent news and what's been going on. I'll put it on screen here. This is from PDB. Now, he's actually quoting everything, which we don't need to see this, but this is just a text conversation. And so it's from an RFK. And so somebody clearly is from Trump's perspective talking to him. But this person says it's pretty crazy, a bit disappointing for me, obviously, because he wants RFK. But RFK had no chance this time. I'll say one thing. The Democrats are effed up in so many ways, I won't be voting for them. Maybe never again. You guys were right about Trump. And then the guy responds, he says, Democrats have been taken over by communism. It's incredibly important we beat them or the world will suffer. To which the guy responds, he says, I think what's going on is even worse than communism, which I agree. Seems like it's a global elitist cabal that supports one world government depopulation. And he's actually right on that, you know, very satanic agendas that we're seeing. What's up, Donnie? Nice to see you in here. Yeah, mostly on time. I'm late too, so don't even worry about it, brother. But he goes on to say, destroying Western civilization through migration, destroying families through sexual perversions, censorship against anything that goes against their ideologies. They also seem to be buying up a lot of farmland. I think it continues. Where are we at right here? And planning something big. So many farmers have been protesting globally. And of course, they have no issue with wars. WEF might be behind this. And, you know, he names Klaus Schwab. He needs to bluntly state some of these objectives. And then he goes on to say Trump's the only one with courage and balls to do anything about it. I was wrong about him. Let's see how this term is different from the last one, especially with RFK on board. And the guy says, wow, you sound like me. And so I think it's pretty nice to see people see through these things. I think really is holding people like that back is because they have been abused so heavily by just like the media just dumping and poisoning the well over and over and over again. I mean, one of the common things people point out too in regards to like the Epstein stuff and the Epstein allegations is they've already tried, you know, alleging literally every crime known in humanity on Donald Trump. And so if you were to think about it logically, the fact that they haven't gone the Jeffrey Epstein route shows that there must be such a lack of proof they can't even lie about it. Now, obviously, you still have very low IQ Democrats posting like pictures from way back in the day when he was around Jeffrey Epstein. But obviously, we all know the stories surrounding this, which is, Donald Trump didn't want him there. And I believe explicitly there's one instance where Donald Trump says, like, I don't want him at Mar-a-Lago anymore, or Mar-a-Lago. I might be saying that wrong. I think it's a great thing that we are hitting critical mass with people being able to recognize what's going on with the left. And I think that specifically in the framing of the same way the red pill kind of is helping men, which is everyone's able to identify, okay, this is what's wrong. This is what's bad. Like, this can't be true. And now we're trying to move to, how do we fix it? Like, what are the right solutions? And so we're clearly going to have disagreements the further we move here, especially seeing that on Truth Social, Donald Trump posted, my administration will be great for women's reproductive health, which is a very, very kind of leftward stance from where he was at previously in 2016. And we'll get into that a little bit later, because I wanted to actually show this to show you just how the media is poisoning the well. And this is actually from ALX on Twitter too. I'll go ahead and put it on screen here right now. It's from ALX. Endorses Trump. Less than 12 hours later, RFK Jr. accused of being a cocaine dealer at Harvard University as former classmate speaks out. I mean, you can't make this stuff up, dude. It's like, I mean, anyone who's been paying attention is just like, it's so overt that the media's singular purpose is to be defamatory towards anything that could be positive, anything that could get rid of the swamp, anything that goes against the left-wing satanic values. I mean, what else do you have to see, right? Even like RFK was barely in the news, and I bet we're going to see 10 more articles similar to this, right? We're going to have victims coming forward and being like, actually, like that one time he sold cocaine, he like, and just stuff like that I'm just like, you just got to really shake your head at. And I mean, honestly, quite insane, the persistence they have. And it shows you, again, not only just the depravity of the left, but the depravity of these journalists who just choose to continually, no matter how many times they get called out for being liars, for being in the wrong, they just keep going. They keep pushing that boulder up the hill. And I can't remember what that story is, but that's where they're at, right? They are just pushing it up the hill. And it's just like, man, expect more of this. That's what I got to say. Expect more of this. Expect some more kind of egregious stuff to go on with Trump, or not Trump, but RFK, because it's coming. And they will do everything in their power to try to win the appeal of the low IQ headline readers who choose not to read articles. But let me go ahead and this is actually it for the RFK stuff. We're going to move to a bit more smaller stories where we get back to the Telegram founder being arrested. This is actually going to catch people's attention right here. Let me actually go here. This is actually Keanu Reeves is going to be in Star Wars. Okay. I don't really know how to feel about this, right? I feel like the aura and the likability of Keanu Reeves is actually going to start slipping the more he does some of these roles, particularly if he takes part in an extremely woke Star Wars project, especially if it's anything like Star Wars The Acolyte. But again, The Acolyte was canceled, after one season because people clearly were tired of that. But it just says here from Culture Crave, which I do see they post quite a bit. They're a huge following. I think they might even be 1 million, about 500,000. So Lucasfilm was interested in casting him in an upcoming Star Wars project. Not sure who he would be. If you were asking me from a avid Star Wars nerd, I would bet he'd play somebody like Revan, or he would be positioned in some kind of master role. He is getting a bit older. And so one can only hope that Keanu can bring some balance to the Force, for a lack of better words. To move to another issue, though, and this is going to probably bother some people. We'll go back into actual news here. I'm trying to break some of this dark stuff up. And I'm not really sure where this is from. I have an idea of where this video clip is coming from. But it goes back in being hand in hand with trying to normalize pedophilic relations, along with what you see with the minors, what is it called? MAP, minor attracted persons. I always mess that up. And this is from Khaleesi on Twitter. This, again, it blows my mind how you can just kind of say anything in like a TED Talk form. And the average person is like, oh, wow. Oh, yeah, that is okay. Oh, yeah. And it's just like, dude, like, it like kind of like that Wojak feeling of the liberals where they're like, oh, that's the feeling I get when I see stuff like this, because who's falling for this, right? Only people who believe in nothing, right? And that comes back to, if you believe in nothing, you will fall for anything. So let me go ahead and put this on screen. And this is again from Khaleesi on X. And she says, shocking. Scholars are now discussing how pedophilia is a legitimate sexual orientation that should be accepted by society. And just going by the way that she has worded this, I'm assuming that this is actually at a college event of some level, or at least even an undergrad presentation, which is just, again, these people are very depraved, and it does have satanic roots to everything going on. And I will say once again, if anything's wrong with the sound, please let me know. I will adjust it accordingly.
Us feel discomfort when we think about pedophiles. But just like pedophiles, we are not responsible for our feelings. We do not choose them, but we are responsible for our actions. And we must make a decision. It is in our responsibility to reflect and to overcome our negative feelings about pedophiles, and to treat them with the same respect we treat other people with. We should accept that pedophiles are people who have not chosen their sexuality and who, unlike most of us, will never be able to live it out freely if they want to lead an upright life. We should accept that pedophilia is a sexual preference.
Yes. From an emotional point of view, I can kind of understand that you would want to eliminate these people from society.
Dude, there's no way you're about to say, I understand why you'd want to actually delete these people from Earth, and then go on to say, and here's why we should accept them, dude. Like, I'm sorry, dude.
However,
it's ridiculous.
It doesn't make sense. And that's because we're talking about biology. We're talking about a sexual orientation. Something that we simply cannot change. And on top of that, every day new people are born with the same difficulty. So it's not practical to eliminate these people from society. They haven't done anything wrong.
I mean, I just, man, dude, I wish I could say I was shocked. I wish I could sit here and be like, dude, wow, like, did someone see how insane that was? But I'm not anymore. I'm more scared that, like, what happens when this does become to be a bit more mainstream? What happens if this becomes to be accepted? Like, people aren't going to put up with this, dude. Are we going to have a specific state that's like, I don't know, going to become an actual sanctuary state for this stuff? Naming probably like Colorado or California. Then he says, and where are children? Yeah, right, right, exactly. This seems like it's coming from some, maybe, two childless cat ladies is who this is. And again, you saw that TEDx logo here. Let me go back a little bit. Like, this is who they allow. TEDx, Sitter Galeen, I think is her name. I'm assuming that's what her name is. Oh, I'll actually put it on screen. I'll show you. Like, look, like, and this is who's getting sponsored by this, right? But could you imagine someone who had the ideals of like a Christian nationalist was wanting to do a TED Talk? I doubt they'd even be allowed anywhere near the place. They'd be having it burnt down. They'd be having riots outside the place. They'd be screaming white supremacists. It'd be global news. I mean, it's just like, again, it shows you that the media as a whole, as an apparatus, not only just in its institutional form from journalists and pundits on its way down, but also like these side affiliates, like these TED Talks or anything else that may have a bit of ethos or credence of like credibility. They're all in on it, dude. They're all in on some major facade that's like, we're going to ensure that this society can be sexualized to the highest degree. Like, we are getting to the very end, and I say it all the time, of the rat utopia experiment, like the beautiful ones and so on and so forth. And just, I had to bring news to it because when I see stuff like that, it just like it blows me away, dude. Like, I have opinions I can't say on live about this stuff, but I will say, this is the reason why I have such a strong conviction to putting Christian ethics and framework back into society. It's gone so far. And then you have Kukla saying, exactly, they've been biting out the bit, wanting to do this new category for the maps. They didn't choose it. They're just so misunderstood. Boo-hoo. Right. But it's all they have. It's the emotional appeal. But it goes back to the fact that their entire base is the ones who constantly get abused with the emotional appeal. They show you this thing, so go back to the fake story about Trump mocking the disabled person. It's all they have is to make sure that they can play on people's emotions and make them feel that feeling anything other than that. Otherwise, it's just, you're in the wrong. It's bad. It's too much. And so with that, we'll go ahead and move on to the Telegram founder being arrested because obviously, you can't actually run a platform without censoring nonstop content. And so we'll put it on screen here. This is from Andrew Torba, who is the actual founder of Gab. Man, this thing will not go away. He's the founder of Gab, so he's another platform, social media platform that doesn't censor quite a bit, and it's also one of the reasons why I believe it's not on the App Store. I think if you wanted to actually find this this actual app, you have to download it through some kind of weird Android platform, but I could be wrong on that. But it says her first giveaway was her socialist accent. I never heard that before, but I'm actually going to start using that when people say things that are ridiculous. Like, I almost debated you, but your socialist accent gave you away. And then Donnie says, I'll never use that term. They are pedophiles and predators. You are absolutely correct, dude. That is exactly what these people are. And quite honestly, like, I think it's a bit worse to be a spokesperson for these people, right? Like, that's some just level of aggression that I can't sustain. I can't even stomach it. But to go back on here on screen, this is from Reclaim the Net. Telegram founder Pavel Durov is arrested in France, reportedly for refusing to censor content. And again, if you're not familiar with who this is, he is the founder of Telegram, which is one of the messaging apps that's used by those who get deleted and banned from all other platforms. They get sent to the to the banned man space. You're not allowed to be involved in society anymore. And Andrew Torba is another one, again, like I said, who founder of Gab. And this is why he says, this is why I no longer travel outside the U.S. And definitely don't expect the U.S. to protect you on these grounds too, because the U.S. definitely feels the same way. It's just by the fact that you have too many rights that prevent these people from acting in this manner. And so Clint Russell had a reaction to this, and I thought it was also good here too, and I'll put it on screen. He says they are charging the owner of Telegram with every crime committed using his platform. This is similar to what Ross Ulbricht, and again, Ross Ulbricht is the founder of Silk Road, which is on the dark web, or deep web, whichever, interchangeably really, received a life sentence for in the U.S. Both of these men should be freed. Elon Musk will be next, no doubt. And I think that picks up on specifically the aspect where you had, I think it was Mark Rowley, talking about how they do not fear America, and they will be seeking out extraditions for content posted related to the UK laws, things that you're not allowed to post, specifically targeting people who were making comments on the immigration status and the riots that were ongoing in the UK. Although seemingly they've died down, but the violence has not. Again, more of that to come. It's outside the UK, but Europe as a whole is suffering from this all over. And so Andrew Tate even says here too, he says the owner of Telegram has been arrested in France for failing to censor the truth on his application. And the potential charges include support for terrorism, drug trafficking, complicity in crimes, mass fraud, money laundering, concealment, pedophile content, sanction evasions, and more. So they're going to try to pin literally everything that they can under the sun that they deem that's on Telegram that shouldn't be allowed. And they're going to try to pin him for all of those crimes. So he definitely is looking for a life sentence. If I'm correct, Ross Ulbricht got like 2 life sentences over. It's like, he got like 2 back-to-back 40 years stacked on top of each other. I don't think that they're concurrent. But again, it was in the news that Ross Ulbricht could possibly be one of these individuals who gets a pardon from Trump if he were to win the presidency. And I think that came alongside the Libertarian Party when they did the Libertarian Convention. And that's when Trump actually made an appearance to try to sway people over. It's getting scary out there, and so the longer that the rest of the globe begins to adopt all of these kind of insane policies where you can't say anything no matter what the subject is, as long as they deem it to be the incorrect opinion, the less secure the less secure I feel that America will actually uphold their protections here in the States, especially if we were to get a Kamala Harris presidency, which Lord help us if we do. Because I said this about the Elon Musk instance, because that's who Mark Rowley said, even Elon Musk is up for debate. I don't see Kamala Harris protecting Elon. I would see her actually aiding the UK and extraditing Elon, because their goals are aligned in the fact that obviously you wouldn't want such a free speech platform and such a eccentric billionaire who's willing to be a maverick, just doing whatever he wants because he has that, what's it called, FU money. And so you kind of see some of these similarities here that are just like, it gives you reason to pause, and let alone imagine if they came for some kind of random individual citizen here in the States. Like I have much more belief that maybe an individual citizen would be protected. But again, the closer we get to a Kamala Harris presidency and not a Donald Trump one, the more that this actually becomes a reality and something you truly do have to fear. Maybe we'll get some kind of warning that's like, you have a week to delete all of your tweets, right? Maybe we can do like a purge and save some people. Outside of that, once again, it's getting extremely scary. And if anything, the most important rights that you do have are from the First and the Second Amendment, right? Your right to not only, for one, speak freely and freely express yourself and freely assemble, but secondly, your ability to defend that first right with firearms in case of self-defense and defend yourself from tyranny, the original intended purpose of the Second Amendment. So with that, there was one more piece here, which is actually from Mario Nafal, and I like actually grabbing Mario Nafal because he's very, very objective. Now, I don't actually agree with most of his stances because he's an extremely neutral individual on a lot of things, but he does a lot of international news, global news, and so I think he's a pretty good source for this. And so, once again, the U.S. wanted to control Telegram better. And so this isn't even the global aspect. This is an interview with Tucker Carlson. It's about 3 minutes long, and I did not see this at all until earlier. And apparently the U.S. government with the FBI tried to infiltrate him in his application Telegram on the back end, I believe by hiring one of his engineers. Now I'll go ahead and take a listen instead of reading all of that what's up above, because I'll probably explain it here. But once again, any issues with sound, please let me know. I will adjust accordingly.
We get too much attention from the FBI, the security agencies, wherever we came to the U.S. So to give you an example, last time I was in the US, I brought an engineer that is working for Telegram, and there was an attempt to secretly hire my engineer behind my back by cybersecurity officers or agents, whatever they are called.
The US government tried to hire your engineer?
That's my understanding. That's what he told me.
To write code for them or to break into Telegram?
They were curious to learn which open source libraries are integrated to the Telegram's app, on the client side, and they were trying to persuade him to use certain open source tools that he would then integrate into the Telegram's code that, in my understanding, would serve as backdoors.
Would allow the US government to spy on people who use Telegram?
The US government, or maybe any other government, because a backdoor is a backdoor regardless of who is using it.
That's right.
And
that's a little surprising to hear. Maybe it's not surprising, it's offensive. You're confident that happened?
Yes. There is no reason for my engineer to make up the stories. Also because I personally experienced similar pressure in the US. Whenever I would go to the US, I would have two FBI agents greeting me at the airport, asking questions. One time I was having my breakfast at like 9 a.m. and the FBI showed up at my house that I was renting. And that was quite surprising. And I thought, we're getting too much attention here. It's probably not the best environment to run.
Why would had you committed a crime?
No. They were interested to learn more about Telegram. They knew I, left Russia. They knew what we were doing, but they wanted details. And my understanding is that they wanted to establish a relationship to, in a way, control Telegram better. I understand that they were doing their job. It's just that for us running a privacy-focused social media platform, that probably wasn't the best environment to be in. We want to be focused on what we do, not on government relations of that sort.
Government relations.
I gotta say though, what do you mean doing their job, right? Like, it's not the government's job to ensure that censorship happens on any level, right? Especially when you're being greeted by FBI agents every time you come to the States. Now, I could be wrong. He definitely sounds foreign there, so maybe Telegram's not US based. maybe he's not even a native U.S. born citizen. So maybe that gives reason to why he may be extradited or why these things are actually happening. So I could be wrong on those aspects. But either way, that story in and of itself was entirely sinister. Working behind the scenes to try to hire the engineer to guarantee some kind of backdoor or at least some kind of level of access to what's going on in Telegram when its intended purpose is to protect people from being spied on. That's like what it's sold as. It's why people use it. It's why Nick Fuentes' entire group chat migrated to Telegram amid him being, essentially doxxed and removed from everything. I mean, they're willing to do this stuff. And I think it doesn't even matter how much it gets reported on. I don't think it matters even how much these stories go viral, because the average person is not only just apathetic to what goes on, they're so detached and disconnected from what these things actually mean, that it can be a headline and they go, oh, wow, man, that's crazy. It's like, I feel like you would expect a bit more kind of vitriol seeing something on this level occur. And, I could be wrong on that. Maybe people are paying a bit more attention and they see these things and they kind of gasp and they're like, well, that's the government for you. But it seems like we're not getting enough or strong enough pushback on the actual government overreach when it does come to the First Amendment. And that's the one that really, I think, no matter what side of the aisle you're on, you could be the most lefty wingnut on this planet, you would protect against the fact that the government was trying to censor something. You would expect. Now, I do understand the actual stereotype, which is, unban me, let me speak. But the moment that right winger says something I disagree with, we'll jump on and make sure that he can't speak. So I guess for the progressive leftoids who are in the cult, less so. But you would imagine even those who are classically liberal, such as those who are probably going to be voting for RFK, would feel like this is insane. Like, this cannot go on. This is entirely too far overreach, as I said earlier. And so that was it for the Pablo. As far as I could tell, a lot of this is breaking right now, so I wasn't able to actually gather quite a bit up, but I'm glad I was able to find this Tucker Carlson interview. Not sure how old it is because it was posted by Marna Fall at 6:20 p.m. So I imagine this happened quite a bit ago, or maybe it happened recently. I'm not sure. Somebody feel free to fact check me on that. So maybe the story's been out for quite a bit, and really because it's Telegram, it gets kind of obfuscated, because why would the government want to, advertise for a platform that they clearly have problems with? And so it makes sense why the media and why you probably haven't heard of it if you haven't already. So there is another 5 minutes. This is a bit longer video, and this is actually going to be funny. I'm trying to break these things up. Like, really, really dark story, funny story, right? That way we're all not sitting here blackpilling over what may possibly happen with the government. And I thought this was phenomenal. And even Elon Musk commented on this. I'm not sure what this guy's name is. I actually had it earlier, and then I lost it. I think the account is from Champagne Joshi. Man, forgive me, I can't speak. I'll put it on screen here though. And so this guy goes to the DNC while it was going on, and he's essentially infiltrating it, and acting as if he was a liberal, acting as if he was a progressive, and he's asking some of the most obtuse questions and getting even more absurd answers. I mean, this first one is like offering a false binary. Yeah. And you'll see what I mean. We'll go ahead and play it. It's about 5 minutes, about almost 6 minutes long.
Would you rather have a democracy or access to abortions?
Either or. I feel like that's a very tough question to answer. I feel like that's almost not possible to answer. I feel like I couldn't pick one or the other.
Even if you had to choose?
If I had to choose.
Can we get a final answer? I know it's hard.
I guess access.
See, right there. Access to abortion. She would rather have the ability to kill her child than the ability to freely live inside a democracy. Now, understand we are a constitutional republic, so a lot of this doesn't make sense. But to these individuals who have no idea what's going on, really, truly, it does. But even in their world, she would have rather had access to abortion than democracy. I mean, WTF. Like, what is going on, man? And I like how he tagged her with Brat here. Let's go ahead and keep watching.
To abortions.
It's Brat Summer. The queen of the brats has arrived. Yes, queen.
Do not come.
Are you as hard as I am right now? She's good something stuff. Special. Good stuff. Can we please, this year, it'd be so Brat, have a higher tax rate for rich white men?
Well, if we have a Democratic Congress, we certainly will.
Yeah, baby. Tax those rich old whiteys. Come on. Are you worried Donald Trump's going to weaponize the justice system if he gets in power?
I'm concerned about Project 2025.
Yeah.
And it's important that individuals understand that
Yeah.
Project 2025 basically consolidates power in the hands of one dangerous man.
Yeah.
And so it's really critically
Start
important.
prosecuting his political enemies.
Exactly.
Guys, I have to say, you are even more beautiful in person.
Oh, I love him. I love you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Give me your best pickup line.
My best pickup line. I'll pay.
Who are the cuties in the Democratic Party that are speaking?
That was actually solid from
I don't know.
Kamala.
Talk to anyone who lives in D.C. It's hard to find a cute Democrat.
Oh my God, shots fired.
No, that's the tea. Ask anyone who lives in D.C. and who works in Democratic politics. It's hard to find the cute ones.
The Republican guys are hotter.
Yeah, but they're evil. So, I don't know.
We kind of love evil. Oh my God.
I feel like
You are so bad. It's time to call it the red carpet, the blue carpet, because the conservatives have literally no cool famous people. What do you eat after a long day at Congress? Did you get your vasectomy yet?
That's so awkward.
Oh, it's going to be a wild weekend, baby. Tim Walz has the best shot in Congress. Who has the best back shot?
Oh my God.
One final game. Yes queen or no queen, okay?
I'll give you a yes or no. How about that?
Okay.
Amazing.
Can you do yes queen or no queen? Or?
I can't do that. I can't.
Oh.
He doesn't need to be. He's like, I gotta beat the homosexual allegations, man. They're killing me on X. Please don't do this to me.
Really? Free abortions.
Yes, queen.
Free gender affirming care for migrants.
Yes, queen.
Child tax credits for dogs.
Yes, queen.
Ban standardized testing.
Yes, queen.
Oh yeah, my ADD is so crazy. Get rid of those things, please.
Yes, queen. Yeah.
Amazing. Different tax rate for white men.
Yes, queen.
Amen, sister. Love you. Love her energy. She's a yes.
I mean, look at the face, though, to be so openly racist. It's the face of something truly sinister, man. And I understand a lot of these people are misled, but there are definitely just the same amount of those who know exactly what they're doing and want it despite the allegations.
Yes, queener. My girlfriend needs to get an abortion. Could you help me cover it up? Please? I need help. I need to do it discreet way. Oh. Asshole. Romeo, wherefore out there Romeo?
Sorry.
Romeo, wherefore out there Romeo? Who do you think has a bigger lightsaber? Donald Trump or Joe Biden?
I mean, come on. Really?
And what's the best way a guy could approach
Okay,
you?
I can respect that.
Approach me, I guess, with a microphone and a couple of a seersucker suit, a microphone, and my daughter.
Could I be a good stepdad? So some Gen Z doubters of Kamala have noted her record persecuting people for weed. I'm a stoner. I use it for PTSD. Do you think that era is so over? She's so over that?
I think that even in the period of the Biden-Harris administration, they have been working very hard in order to say no.
What about Coke and stuff?
Excuse me?
What about Coke?
In her, I would have to look at it, but
Decriminalize the drugs, baby.
Thank you, sir.
Coke for the boys.
Thank you.
Another old white guy, am I right? Is Kamala so us?
She's so
It's so
us
well
because
done.
she's brat. Kamala
Yeah,
is brat.
she is so brat. What does brat mean?
Brat is you're like a party girl, but you go out at really late at night and you fall asleep with all your makeup on. And
See, this is why the whole when you try to paint Kamala as this cackling drunk lady, it doesn't faze the left because the left loves that about her. They love the fact that she's kind of stumbling around, slurring her words, coconut tree. They see themselves in that. And so when you attack that, they feel like you're attacking them because they are the party of the pill popping degenerate drunk in an alley at 3 a.m. party. It is insane, dude. But just props to this guy on this video, dude. This is so well done. We got about a minute left to go.
I mean, I have to love Kamala being in a menage a trois at one point.
hot summer.
Get the best Kamala laugh ever.
Oh my God, she has the best laugh.
Joy. We
Like, do you see what I mean? Like they don't mind this, dude. like they don't mind this whatsoever at all. Like they see themselves in Kamala. So you attack her for that, they feel like they're being personally attacked.
love joy. We're all about joy. Okay, how do we guarantee equity of joy?
Equity of joy will flow forth from Kamala. It's just a given and part of her.
We are manifesting.
It's coming to
People
you.
say vibes don't matter, but we are manifesting our nation.
It to you.
Oh,
We love you.
we have a woman of color, and we also have Tim Waltz. What a great example for the body positive community. What do you think Tim Waltz can be as an inspiration for body positive people?
A young man came to him and said, we want to have a gay club here at our high school. And he said, I'm going to lead that because I need to be
He's like a gay leader.
Dude, I'm dying, dude. That was so good. And he wants to lead that. Dude. No shame, dude. Like literally no shame with these people, dude. And again, if anyone knows who this guy is, like please shout him out. I would love to give him credit. I had his name earlier and I don't have it anymore. So I apologize. But that post is like going viral on X. If you want to find it specifically, Elon Musk quote tweeted it, so you can find it along on his page as well. But dude, that was so well done. And it's like, it's idiocracy, dude. This is idiocracy on a level that like I didn't even think was possible. Like I thought we were going to kind of get past the meta point of people saying it to where we'd kind of be like, oh, we'll kind of like pull back and chill out because this is kind of ridiculous. And then they went all in. They pushed their chips to the table and they were like, no, we're doing this, dude. We're going to be insane. Oh, okay. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you had a laugh with that because it's going to get a little bit more sinister here. Again, I'm trying to break these stories up from dark, very black pill to like white pill. Like this is okay. And yeah, this is amazing. How insane are these people? Very, 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 very insane. Levels to which I didn't think was possible, quite honestly. But we got to move past from these people are insane to like they are misguided and just outright evil. And again, dude, building a statue to abortion outside of a clinic that's offering free vasectomies and free abortions is like, it's the story of Exodus, dude. Like they're building their golden calf. Like that is way beyond anything that I could ever imagine. Degeneracy politicized. That's actually a phenomenal way to say it, right? Like we're going to make it legal for you to be this drug-riddled, sad individual with no moral foundation in life. Like, fair enough, dude. Fair enough, right? Unfortunately, though, we're going to go to a bit of a darker story here, right? And so this is actually coming from Germany. And this is the Festival of Diversity ends in the exact manner that you think it would. And obviously that involves multiple people being stabbed. Multiple people being stabbed. This goes alongside everything we've been seeing with the UK. This goes alongside with everything we've been seeing, I mean, across Europe as a whole, which is importing a culture, a third world culture at that, and then letting it run rampant with literally no actual pushbacks against it. And with this recent article, even, you now have one of their prime ministers coming out and saying, well, this is why we got to ban knives. And it's like, dude, no, this is why you got to ban Arabs from invading your country, dude. Like, this is why you need to actually like, pull back on immigration. It's just quite insane the way they do this. And so I'll put it on screen here. This is from World Source News 24/7 on X. And I got to pause it right here. I'm not sure if this actually shows anything. But you can see it breaking. At least 9 people were stabbed at Festival of Diversity in Solingen, Germany. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. The attacker has been described by eyewitnesses to local media as an Arab man, and the suspect is still at large after the mass stabbing in Germany. He said, yeah, the Brat Borat undercover. Yeah, that's actually pretty similar to what that was. That's like the vibe I got. But with this, the manhunt's still on. You know, Zero Hedge even wrote an article talking about that even most U.S. outlets are omitting the fact that he is of Arab descent. I don't have the Zero Hedge article, but I do have some snippets here off screen. And so there wasn't even a fight to spur it. The man started attacking at random. So much so to the point that there wasn't any kind of like discourse going on, that the witnesses like thought that the first guy they saw fall, they thought he was drunk. They thought it was just some kind of drunk guy falling over, because like nothing was happening. But next thing you know, people are being stabbed. And so it also says here, in May of this year, an Afghani killed a police officer and stabbed 6 more people in the same exact town. It is not a knife problem. Not a knife problem. So instead of immigration control, though, they do want to ban knives. And that was what came with the Zero Hedge article. But with this, though, and I'll put it on screen here, is the fact that ISIS is claiming responsibility for this Solingen attack. And this is from AF Post, and I can't read whatever that is. I'm an American. It says ISIS claims responsibility for Solingen mass stabbing attack. Now, what I also find eerie is the fact that there has been a resurgence of ISIS, at least claiming the attacks. I'm not sure how overt they are being outside of simply claiming these attacks. There was another recent one, another large one, and forgive me because I can't remember which specific one it was, that they also claimed. And it's not actually ISIS as far as I believe. I think it's the new cell of them is called ISIS-K. There's some theories along with what goes on with where Tommy Robinson is coming from, and a lot of this does seem to be an attempt to, at least from my perspective, draw up, people say Islamophobia, but more so a just general negative sentiment against people of Islamic descent. Now, I'm not saying, that people's sentiments aren't unheard and that it's not real or organic, but all this seems to coincide with, the rhetoric we get from Donald Trump, we get from J.D. Vance, particularly right after the RNC when he came out and he was like, oh, yeah, here's your VP nomination. And J.D.'s like, yeah, and here's how we should bomb Iran. It's like, what? And so on those levels, I can only see that there is, again, a leading kind of sentiment to build up to this to ensure that the sentiment is then redirected at the foreign countries overseas rather than dealing with the actual problem that is existing within the borders of the country, which is the immigration and the fact that the cultures literally do not mesh together. They are literally at complete odds. And it leads to these kind of jihadic, I think that's the right word, or jihad, attacks out of pure ecclesiastical foundations, which is for their church, for their religion, for their belief, they must do these things or they find themselves in these positions. And it's pretty savage, to say the least. It's very savage behavior, stuff you would expect from Aztecs if you were a Spanish conquistador. And with that, though, and to even put an even more cherry on top of like how egregious some of this stuff is, I saw this from Sneeko Updates, because I do follow Sneeko quite a bit, especially he does a lot of good work overall in truth-telling. Now, I don't agree with him at all, nearly 100%. And I agree with him even less than where I sit with people like Nick Fuentes. But I'll just show you this insanity that I saw from him, right? And so he's been doing a lot of these religious debates. Now, he's been hosting him recently. I don't think he's been partaking in them himself, but he's been surrounding himself with a crew of Muslims who are at a bit more at the higher top of the chart, if you would say, those who are actually well speakers or good speakers, forgive me, I can't speak, for the faith itself and provide reasoning. They do, street preaching, or they do, they lead some form of ministry in Islam. But if you read this caption here, this hijab, I believe it's this guy right here, says that Andrew Tate has better characteristics than Jesus and Christianity. Now, I mean, dude, come on. Like outright, like heresy, dude. Like, what are you talking about? It's the most ignorant thing I've ever heard uttered. Well, it's not. I mean, people from the left talk all the time. But this goes alongside the fact that there's been multiple instances of these snippets coming out. And I don't think it's all him. I think it's from this group of people. So who I don't know what their names are. Forgive me. Also, one of them being, and I don't have it on screen, which is that one of these guys said he would rather have 50 homosexual sons before he had one Christian son, to show you just the level of difference in their belief and how they view so downwardly of the Christian faith. And they honestly spit on the fact that Jesus in Christianity is enshrined in his meekness. Now, I'll go ahead and just play this too. It's only about a minute long because you got to hear him say it for himself.
Our Jesus is so much more virtuous. Is the kind of man any young person would want to follow. Their Jesus, they may, in their own religious context, want to follow him. But in the meantime, they're watching Andrew Tate because, in a way, Andrew Tate, the character of Andrew Tate, has certain things that the New Testament Jesus doesn't have.
Oh, man.
That's the truth.
They're going to be angry on that one.
It doesn't matter.
Who's going to be angry? It doesn't matter.
Well, effectively, no, I'm saying
No,
the New Testament Jesus, I'm sorry to say, is a contradictory figure, because you've got him in when he's got no power, yes, he's acting in a very forgiving, you could call it way, very placid way, very docile.
I think this is the face of somebody who knows what this man just said on its surface, even though he is Muslim, is just flat out wrong. Now, I don't have the fuller clip, so who knows if he even gave me a little bit of pushback on that. But for him to just even say like, oh, they're going to be mad about that one, and kind of look at the camera and kind of like dart his eyes around to be like, I can't believe I heard what he just said, is a good sign to show maybe that if he continually surrounds himself with these individuals, that he will begin to actually move towards Christ. Once the constant wrongs, the constant missteps, and the constant just kind of rhetoric like this is a little bit reprehensible, he'll move closer to Christ and hopefully convert. And I can only hope that for Sneeko. But I think there's like 13 seconds left. I'll play it out.
Docile way. Yes. But then when he comes back,
The biblical narrative.
when he comes back in the book of Revelation, what does he do? He kills the prostitute, Jezebel, this and that. Why?
Yeah.
What, so the moment you get power, you start, it's a killing spree now. Our Jesus.
And I will say, one of the things I will say with this though, is, you know, Andrew Tate is definitely like an definitely not neutral figure. He's extremely polarizing on the same level that somebody like Donald Trump is, if not a bit more, because I feel like Andrew Tate probably has less support than a Donald Trump. Is to say that his rise to popularity and fame of where he's at is because his message resonated with a reactionary group of men who were tired of dealing with what was over-the-top degeneracy and feminism. And so this goes back to what I said earlier, which is, along with the RFK and Donald Trump stuff, which is most people in the middle and the right can identify these problems. The same way with the red pill, right? Like they are identifying things that most men find to be problems, but no one's saying it out loud. And so they fear the utterance of saying these things, put them in a position to be like, oh, you're a misogynist, you hate women, oh, look at you, oh, you're insecure. And so then to have somebody of that level, of that clout, of Andrew Tate, then take it up there is the reason why he gained and amassed such a following, is because it was like there's somebody saying it, and who, even when giving pushback, he goes, no, F that, I'm right. And so that was a very, very magnetic kind of effect that's been drawing men. And you see the same thing kind of work its way down through with people like Myron Gaines, with people like, you know, we're Fresh and Fit, obviously, but the Whatever podcast as well. Now you're seeing Andrew Wilson make, you know, common occurrences there too, or appearances, I should say. And this isn't an endorsement of Andrew Tate, because as far as I am sitting here right now, my opinion is non-existent until I see a bit more of what's going on with this current case, because I have seen some pretty disgusting videos, to say the least, of him previously talking about, you know, sexual relations with 15-year-olds, and he has to ask, like, you know, what is the age of consent here? So, you know, I don't believe that Andrew Tate is the best person on the planet, nor do I think he is the worst person on the planet. I think he became the vessel of this kind of animosity that most men feel towards not only just like women in feminism, but the way that it's been institutionalized and the way the system is just like constantly benefiting women at the expense of men. And so I think in that he became the vessel for people's anger, the same way that Donald Trump became a human Molotov cocktail for politics. I view their kind of their uprisals kind of very, very similar. You know, people who are like, you can have plenty of things you can dislike about both of them, but if you look at it as a net, I would say that what Andrew Tate has done for men here in the United States has been a net positive for like their awakening to being in controlled, and in fact giving them advice such as like, go and work out, go and do this. Now, not every solution of his is good, nor is it biblical, nor is it Christian, but the one specifically about you need to get up off your bum, go put work in, are the actual statements that are like meaningful and probably have drawn people closer to where they would have been, you know, without him otherwise. So again, not a full endorsement on that. Now, another bit that we did have before we get a little bit further into the Shroud of Turin, because that is something I do want to cover here, is this bit from Jon Stewart regarding the lack of Palestinian representation at the left, the party of the Hamas party, as you will. I'll go ahead and put it on screen here. You know, Jon Stewart even pointed this out, and you know, you get this from little Donald Trumpo, which I think is the account name. And he says, even this idiot knows Now, what I found curious, to be honest with you, is not only did they go ahead and, you know, kind of bench Josh Shapiro for Tim Walz, despite what the electorate would be depending on in Pennsylvania and needing those electoral votes, but also on the grounds of the fact that he's of Jewish descent. It seemed like that was maybe even more so the reason why they chose not to go with him, and less so that they wanted to go with Walz, but that Shapiro would have seen a bigger stumbling block for the party. And then you see that at the DNC that there was once again little to no mention of what is seemingly one of the left's top issues with what's currently going on in the global sphere of things, which also has, you know, loose implications here, particularly in the aspect of what we do with sending financial aid, the possibility of World War III. It is kind of deafening to see that they had no Palestinian representation at the party that's supposedly their entire base at the grassroots level is heralding as like the biggest conflict or their number one issue. So we'll go ahead and take a listen to Jon Stewart kind of lay this out. And again, I am no fan of Jon Stewart, but at least people are holding the feet to the fire who are even in the left wing.
They had black Americans, Hispanic Americans, Asian Americans, gay Americans, Jewish Americans, Palestinian Well, to be fair, it was only 4 nights, 8 hours a night. But really, it's best not to think about the consequences of our actions over there, especially given the theme of the week.
I can feel the excitement in this arena. It's filled with energy and with joy.
The air of joy. 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 Joy.
We will be joyful warriors. The president of joy.
Let us choose joy.
I had the same exact reaction he did, dude. Like, what was that?
Yes. Yes, yes. Oh, it was joyful. For a convention. I know what real joy looks like because I've watched Oprah on her show. You thought people were happy to see her endorse Kamala Harris. You should see what they do when she gives them lip liner.
People want this. It's the Sony virus.
That's joy.
And so I thought that was pretty interesting. You know, it seems like Jon Stewart is kind of positioning himself to be, what's the word? Less so establishment, less so parroting the exact same talking points that you would expect to be seeing from the rest of the party, and in a bit more one that aligns with the actual ideals of the party. You have Donnie saying the party of joy just so happens to be made up of the most miserable human beings. Spot on. And maybe that's why. Maybe that's because it's projection. Maybe it's purely in an attempt to pretend that this is all for everyone's joy and appeasement. Because, you know, I think you're exactly right. I've yet to meet a leftist who I've had a, you know, longer than a 5-minute conversation with, who I can give the honest insight that they are happy with their lives. You know, and it's actually a lot of it, again, it goes back to the misguided aspect too. You know, part of me does feel, you know, poor for these people. I do feel bad, especially some of the younger ones too, given the fact that they are being, what's the word? Inundated, like I said earlier, with nonstop emotional appeal from the media. TikTok even has it, you know, all the algorithms are intended, you know, outside of X, to play on these things. You know, it says controlled opposition. You know, I'm curious why he is being positioned like this. You know, I think that thought has some credence to it. And maybe, and possibly, right? I bet Jon Stewart probably would be somebody that could be paid off in a manner like that, to position himself like that. But the question is, I guess, then who from? But to move on from this, though, and then, you have just a guy saying, no one knows what a constitutional republic is these days. That's too old-timey. I mean, it's not even that it's old, it's too old-timey. It goes to the fact that they do everything in their power to obfuscate actual ideals, And then you take that and compare it to the fact that the Department of Education is literally like dog trash. And so the average person's experience in history and in class is like nothing really meaningful, right? If anything, and from even what my experience was, and I had a more unique experience, a lot of it seems to only really be about, slavery and the Civil War and the lead up to that. And it all seems to have some kind of, once again, emotional kind of lever where the history that's only taught about is the one that would be able to then be leveraged in a discussion today against what would be a constitutional republic. I can't even imagine that they would probably even teach anything beyond the basic context of like the 10th Amendment or the Bill of Rights and the amendments as a whole too. And again, it's hard to expect too when they're poisoning with seed oils and they're poisoning the water with fluoride and they're doing everything in their power to ensure that people have low IQ. And again, when the institutions all herald these ideas and you combine the fact that your TikTok and the algorithms all support this too, democracy, democracy. Donald Trump wants to take our democracy. JD Vance wants to take our democracy. Nick Fuentes is against democracy. I mean, it is driven in their heads that what we do have is a democracy. And it sucks because it's a play on to some of these people who are probably just a little retarded. And so like with that, it makes you feel bad. But at the same time, me seeing this all the time, I can see those who are definitely acting with full awareness of what they're doing. And that I call evil. But to move on though, this is from Harrison Butker, and this actually speaks back to what was happening with that Truth Social post that Donald Trump put out. That was a step to the left from where we were at with abortion and with women. And I'll go ahead and put it on screen here. And this is from Harrison or Ben Zeisloff, who's been getting a lot of flack for his positioning here lately. But you'll see here, this is the original tweet from Harrison Butker. We'll go here first, and this is the actual truth, I guess is what it's called on that app. About 1 million views from him. And he says, no party or candidate is perfect. I implore my fellow Catholic, JD Vance, to help bring the Republican Party back in line with the fundamental platform that all life is valuable and there can be no compromise when it comes to defending the unborn. However, with that said, our obligation is to vote for the lesser of two evils because voting for a lesser evil preserves the good that could be potentially lost. Father Chad Ripperger. And I think that's extremely well said. But then again, my first thought when I read this too is like, why is Harrison Butker more based and like more well-spoken than the average politician? It's like, it just makes you sad, right? How is this guy is a kicker in the NFL and he's out here cooking, but we can't get JD Vance or half of the Republican Party to even say anything that's half as meaningful as this. Now, maybe it's also because it is coming from him that it feels a bit more meaningful. But I do go back to what Ben Zeisloff has here clipped, which is, I'll put it on screen here too. Ben Zeisloff is a very, very strong advocate for abolition in its entirety. I think Ben Zeisloff even recently said that he will not be voting for Trump until that statement is walked back. But then it says, unfortunately, I do not think your fellow Catholic will be very helpful here. He already took his 30 pieces of silver. And we'll go ahead and take a listen to what JD Vance had to say here, which I'm assuming is going to be, and I haven't watched this, but I'm assuming it's going to be oppositional to what Harrison Butker put forward.
Bill, what so many of us have said is that, look, we certainly don't, the Supreme Court made a decision saying that the American people should have access to that medication. Donald Trump has supported that opinion. I support that opinion. I think it's important to say that we actually have to have an important conversation in this country about what our abortion policy should be. Donald Trump is the pragmatic leader here. He's saying most abortion policy is going to be decided by the states. We want to make it easier and more affordable for young women and parents to have families to begin with. We want to lower housing costs, eliminate those surprise medical bills that so many families see after they have a baby. That's the Trump and Republican approach to this issue. Meanwhile, Joe Biden wants taxpayer-funded abortion up to the moment of birth. It's so crazy to me how the Democrats frame this as Republicans. Just let me finish, Kristen. They frame Democrats as being reasonable and pragmatic when in reality, Senator, Republicans are the one trying to find some common ground here.
As you know, very few abortions take place later in pregnancy and almost always because there is a medical emergency. I know Trump is trying to distance himself from Project 2025, but we have to point out that a number of people who are involved with it are former Trump officials, Ben Carson, Peter Navarro, Russ Vought, and others. But just to be clear, you support mifepristone being accessible.
Yes, Kristen, I do. But again, on the Project 2025 issue, what the media and the Democrats are trying to do is attach its most unpopular elements to the Trump administration. It's a 900-page document. I guarantee there are things that Trump likes and dislikes about that 900-page document, but he is the person who will determine the agenda of the next administration. All he said very explicitly is, I am in charge of the next administration because I'm the person running for president. It's just important to make that clarification. On the question,
and if I remember correctly, mifepristone, what she asked, and I think I'm saying that correctly, is a birth control drug. It's a birth control pill. I could be wrong about that, but I'm positive that's what it is. It may be some different form of contraception, but it does obviously encourage infanticide. The difficulty here goes back to exactly what Harrison Butker ended his thing with, which was, ultimately, it's better that you choose the lesser of two evils because you don't want to potentially lose what little is good left. And that's really where we're at, right? I think most people have to understand that abolitionists are in the minority, and as fortunate as that is, that it's ultimately meaningless to withhold your vote when the party on the other end is going to do much, much worse, and allow, and obviously allow every exception or demand and everything about that. I mean, even if you can call them exceptions, they allow it whenever. It's ultimately disturbing for myself because I wish we had a much more grounded and Christian ideal when it came to talking about abortion and what it actually truly is. Specifically, the obfuscation around the act of abortion, like what she was mentioning there, which was medical procedures. Which I brought this up all the time, and Tim Pool does a really good job bringing this up too, which is, in a lot of these medical emergencies, the reason why the woman is experiencing what may be critical condition or something along those lines, fatality even, is because she needs the pregnancy to end, not that she needs the child to die. And there are many ways in which we can actually terminate the pregnancy while also keeping the baby viable with other forms. Now, again, I understand that comes with increased costs as well, but these are also like emergency situations, forgive me. And Abigail saying, unfortunately, that's where I'm at with my vote. Trump isn't perfect, but Harris is terrifying. And I think that's exactly right. And I think it's not even just by what she's presenting right now. I mean, although she does have clearly no policy. I mean, even on her website, I think right now there's still no policy on whatever it is, harriswalls.com. The worry actually becomes how far would they take it if they were to give the reins. And, and I bring this all the time because I think it's not only does it matter in Jeff Younger's case, but I think it matters here too, which is what happens when a wife goes and gets an abortion, or a girlfriend, fiance even, when the husband wants the child. I think then when you have states like Oklahoma, which ban it outright, which then would make or force, I guess, the woman to then flee the state to get it done if she wanted to. You're going to force really bad situations when one state like a Colorado becomes a sanctuary state for abortion from some place like Oklahoma or Arkansas, wherever they're being a bit more hardcore with their Christian values. That opens it up for states to actually oppose each other on those grounds. Thus, Oklahoma says, Colorado needs to extradite this woman to us because she's going to be persecuted for killing this person or killing this unborn child. And then Colorado will defend it and say, we don't recognize those values. We'll protect her and we'll give her refuge. And I think at that, and when we understand just how incompetent government is, and I think actually a better word is like lethargic, how unwilling they are to actually do things that would matter, I think that's when you'll see men take these issues into their own hands and do things that we really wish wouldn't happen. And that's as far as I'll really say it on YouTube. But that's something that I see becoming a very real possibility, especially with the Kamala Harris presidency. And that's not to say it's not possible under Trump. I bet under Trump, though, you would have a bit more level-headed approach from the federal aspect, because that would again call the federal government to come down and impose some authority on an inter between state issue like that. But it's a terrifying reality. And the reason I bring up Jeff Younger is because this can also take place in other avenues, and I'm sure Donnie is very well versed in this guy's story, is that what happens when the same thing happens, but it's not an abortion, it's they're trying to trans your child, and then they're doing things to castrate and sterilize them. Obviously doing less so than taking their life, but removing their ability to have life, removing their ability to have a legacy, and again, I mean, ultimately really denying them their human right of puberty, which, when most of these individuals go through puberty without any of these hormone blockers, they do end up seeing course correction back to being, more normative, heteronormative than where they would have been otherwise. Give me lose my voice again. It's a terrifying prospect, because I think by the daily, this gets realer and realer. And I think that can even have a real chance of happening even under Trump, especially because Roe v. Wade is down to the states now. And so it would actually require some federal involvement, or maybe it's the same way where SCOTUS ruled on the presidential case of 2020, where they said, we don't even want to hear it. And then I think all of those then call into question that some of these men on their individual basis will go and do very, very violent things that we really wish wouldn't happen, especially because it will ultimately end in tragedy for everybody involved. So to move on from here, though, I'm going to probably skip a couple of these, seeing how I am getting down on the 30-minute mark, because I did want to especially cover the Shroud of Turin. It is in the title. One thing I'll make a small note of, too, I actually probably can skip a couple of these. There's now a camp of people on the right who are saying Ozempic is good. I actually grabbed this from Lauren Southern. She said, changing my opinion on Ozempic, I think it may be the only way to push back on our poison food industry. Destroying obesity in America will significantly improve mental health and even political discourse. The data coming out is pretty incredible. Now, I don't know about you, but I will never trust Big Pharma ever in my entire life, period, end of story. I do not trust any of these results. Big Pharma has done enough to make me never trust it ever again. I would rather take two sticks and rub them together and expect the bark to make me a He-Man. But with this being said, this is once again, I'll say this, ban women. Women do not need to be in politics, giving political opinions, because it's ultimately subversive, and it just unites white knights under armaments that otherwise is impossible to fight back against. Especially because you get argued against with, oh, you're insecure. And that's a side point. The other point, though, and it's I don't leave it on my page. Maybe it is on my page. It's pretty easy to grab this here. I actually screen grabbed this, and I said, I know nothing about Ozempic, to be honest, because I don't know the actual in and outs of what the actual side effects are. I haven't looked into it. But people lack willpower, so let's do drugs isn't a selling point for me either. So the individual that Lauren Southern actually quoted has been putting out, supposedly an MD, but as far as I read, he's a dermatologist. This is an interaction I screen grabbed from him. The guy says that the data indicates advising diet and exercise is not an effective solution because in the real world, people don't end up keeping with the program. So he says because people lack willpower, it's better to give them something they will take, like a drug. And the guy literally says, so just take drugs, kids. And he argues back, if drugs reduce the risk of death and improve just about every outcome, sure. Quite literally advocating to drug all people for their lack of willpower, their lack of ability to get up off the couch. And I was just more shocked to see Lauren Southern signify on this, being how someone, even on kind of really just general issues, less so male and female, she's generally been a very based person. This blew me away. I guess, maybe time will tell, and maybe I'm completely just errant on this. And Ozempic does have no bad qualities, but Donnie's even saying it makes you look like a zombie after sustained usage. And we've seen some of these actors who have clearly been taking this stuff. I think one of the most notable ones was can't remember her actual name, but she played Starfire in The Boys. And not only did she get plastic surgery, but she also was on an Ozempic tour, and she literally looks like a ghost. She looks like somebody literally like performed an exorcism on her. I mean, I stand by what I said. There's no amount of them. You can dump this as much information as you want. You are not going to convince me that it is better for individuals to take Ozempic than it is for them to actually physically exercise. But again, this shows you the level and quality of doctors. and why it is so impossible for anyone to trust anything. And if your argument is only because people just don't have the willpower to do things, it's like, I'm sorry. I like, bring the meteor then. Like, I'll take the meteor before I sit here and agree to something as just so dystopic as what this is. So Donnie's saying, look up Ozempic face. Oh, I'm nervous if I look something up that I haven't already put in here. I trust you, Donnie. Ozempic face. Okay, so we got a video here. Oh my gosh, dude. Some of this is terrifying. Let me actually go to like a screenshot. This is like a half and half. Wow. It looks kind of like AI done, but maybe it's just like a demonstration. Do we have any real? Oh, okay. So there are some legitimate effects of like face sagging and skin sinking. Maybe this is how The Walking Dead starts, guys. It wasn't actually a virus. It was a self-made man drug that everyone started taking. My gosh, dude, is there a real photo? Okay, so that seems not too egregious. That seems kind of absurd. Losing hair. And I've seen some of these other ones, like the celebrity faces here. I think that's Jared Leto. I always forget what his name is. That's people, I wish I was more versed in Hollywood. I'd be able to name these people off the top. I wonder if there's any more. Actually, let me just sort this by medium. It's just disturbing. I'm probably not going to see some of the worst examples right at the very top. But clearly it is becoming a luxury drug of choice. Now, what I will say though too is, as far as I've come to understand, and because one of the groomsmen at my wedding, one of my closest friends, is a nurse, he was actually explaining to me that we don't even have to worry about what's it called, Ozempic, but actually that there is other over-the-counter drugs that can do very similar things to them that are a lot more readily available to people, that don't come at the cost of I think it's like $200 like a bottle or whatever Ozempic may be, because it's pretty expensive. And then, I'm not even joking you, I saw an advertisement, I can't think of the company name right now, that is offering a subscription service. I think it's $120 a month, and they will send you a supply of their luxury brand Ozempic to your door. Donnie's zombie since childhood, bro. I'm ready. I mean, me too. Like, don't get me wrong, but man, it's like really bad timing. Like, my daughter's about to be born. It's like, please, like, I mean, I'll be Rick Grimes if I'm required to be, but I was hoping I'd have at least a little bit more time. Now I don't want to have to sit and have to explain her. Well, society used to be this. It didn't always be like this. There's some kind of terrifying thoughts, but I think you're right. I think you're spot on. I think it might have actually some kind of really, really very denigrating and degenerative effects in people, maybe even more so than just physical appearance, but to much of the heads and minds as well. But now, for the final topic, which is the Shroud of Turin. The Shroud of Turin is being deemed as, and I even agree with this too, the greatest discovery in humankind. The single-handed greatest discovery in humankind. Now, if you don't know what this is, or this is going to be brand new to you, the Shroud of Turin is supposedly the burial cloth. It'll be easier to train. I just don't even have to think about. I mean, I'll give her some good fire range training. But the Shroud of Turin is supposedly, and now being evidenced and being concluded as, the actual burial cloth of our Lord Jesus Christ. Now, what went viral was actually that they did an AI replacement video, or an AI negative video, I think, that used what was imprinted upon the cloth to recreate an AI image of what the individual would have looked like, with his face and I believe just his upper body. I think it might be his whole body, but the one I saw was just his head and his shoulders. And it is a spot-on image of what we've seen in iconography since all the way predating back to I think it's early days, 890 AD, 1372 AD. And you can see all the different iconography of what Jesus was and how he's depicted is all very similar. It's one of these things that people kind of get irritated at because they're like, Jesus wasn't white. But even though everything else depicted in history from the beginning of the Roman Church even shows him to be like this. And Donnie says, my kids are soft from the before times. you gotta get them working out there. But let me go here. This is from Eric Siemens on Twitter. This is one of the larger ones that I saw it from. And this is the actual image that the AI recreated, I think with a few extra filters added on. But it is an amazing AI-generated image of Jesus Christ based on the authentic Shroud of Turin. Now, previously, the Shroud of Turin had been, supposedly debunked in some 1988 commission that was done in France, I believe, or whoever was currently holding on to wherever the cloth was residing. And they kind of chucked it up to being medieval forgery. Now, there's a lot of arguments against that. If you want hardcore evidence, I actually sent this clip to my father, I believe yesterday. Timothyology, who is a Roman Catholic, had a great appearance on the Michael Knowles episode where he kind of ran through a bunch of the evidence that supports it while also downplaying what he said was a conspiracy in that 1988 report. And so this tweet goes on to say it's a good reminder of the fact that God became a particular man at a particular moment in history. This is no myth. We worship the God who became one of us. Now, I will go to this clip here. This is from Michael Knowles, and it's about 8 minutes long, so I wanted to save it for the end for people who would be truly interested in it. And so this is him saying a new study is done on the Shroud of Turin has found that the purported burial cloth is 2,000 years old, which actually lines up with the crucifixion of Jesus, rather than the several hundred years old, which came from that 1988 report, which said actually this is just some kind of made-up thing that they forged in medieval times. And so Michael Knowles says this is scandalous, even for some religious people who want religion to be an abstract thing. And we're going to go ahead and watch this in its entirety. I'll probably stop it at a few points to clear things up.
This is from Italy's Institute of Crystallography of the National Research Council. Scientists have just conducted a study on the Shroud of Turin. For those of you who don't know what the Shroud of Turin is, the Shroud of Turin is the purported burial cloth of our Lord, of Jesus. And the burial cloth appeared for the first time in public around the 14th century. So skeptics have said for a long time, this is a medieval forgery. This is not really from antiquity. This is not really the cloth that Christ was wrapped in after he was taken down from the cross. You read in the Bible that Joseph of Arimathea, who had this big tomb, wrapped Jesus in this cloth, and he was buried and entombed. And then he's resurrected. So skeptics don't know how to explain this shroud. What's odd about the shroud, though, is there is this faint image of a man on there, but it doesn't appear to be paint. There does appear to be maybe a little bit of blood, but it's not all blood. What's even stranger is the image that's on the shroud appears to be a photographic negative of the image of a man somewhere between 5'7" and 6 feet tall, a man who appears to have been tortured, a man who appears to have a crown of thorns on his head, a man who appears to have been crucified.
We'll stop him right here because I want to actually add this in. That negative imagery that he's talking about, the way that it's kind of imprinted on this cloth, one of the points that Timothyology points out, it's like this is one of the biggest reasons why it wouldn't be a medieval forgery, because like the technology for such things just like wouldn't have existed. Like how would they have known predating photographs? And then the second thing too is, I don't know if Michael Knowles gets into this, but I also saw in a long thread from Timothyology that the reason why they believe this imprint was there is it actually is very, very similar to what would have been a radioactive kind of burst that would have left that kind of energy that would have imprinted upon the exact kind of imagery that we see on the Shroud of Turin. But I'll let him continue.
But it's a photographic negative, as if it were produced by a spurt of light rather than paints or anything like that. And no one's known what this is. If it is, I mean, as it is, something akin to a photographic negative, no one can really understand how that would have appeared, even if it were a medieval forgery from the 14th century. Well, we didn't have photography back then. What is this thing? So in the 1980s, there was a study that used radiocarbon dating to test when the shroud was made. And in the 1980s, scientists concluded, it's from the Middle Ages. So it can't be the burial cloth of Christ because it's not from antiquity. This is a medieval forgery. And that's what most people know about the Shroud of Turin, if they know anything at all. However, there were always some questions about those studies. What part of the shroud were they testing? Was there any contamination, or was the radiocarbon dating precise? Well, now there's a new study that appears to be a little bit more precise. The study measured the aging, the natural aging of flax cellulose in the shroud and converted it to time since manufacture. So it studied 8 small samples of the fabric of the Shroud of Turin, put them under an X-ray, uncovered little details about the linens and the cellulose's structure and patterns, because the cellulose is made up of sugar molecules that break down over time. So you can reverse engineer this and figure out how old the garment is. And the study discovered that the shroud, the material of the shroud, has measurements that are analogous with samples whose dating, according to historical records, goes back to the 1st century. It's analogous to samples that they have from 55 to 74 AD. So almost precisely at the crucifixion.
If I'm correct, 74 AD, I believe, is the date that is allocated to when Jesus was crucified. I could be wrong on that. I do know in 70 AD is when the temple was crushed, or I guess smited, rather. Again, a lot of this also kind of picks up on that hint from the young Earth creationists, in those theories that kind of revolve around the fact with how carbon dating is seemingly very not ineffective. And in fact, all other kind of dating methods that we have, such as like, I think it's like, rings on trees, and I could be wrong about this, but some of the other kind of ubiquitous forms of measuring and dating objects and materials align up with like a 5,000-year-old kind of Earth, or a little bit longer than that, or shorter than that. And so, to speak to that too, with this carbon dating being wrong, I think maybe it's not even wrong, but maybe it's more so that carbon dating has such a Swiss cheese kind of model to it that it can be kind of applied in ways that is very misleading.
Now, the team also compared the Shroud of Turin with linen samples from the Middle Ages, from the 13th and 14th century, when, according to the 1988 study, the shroud was supposedly forged. However, the samples didn't match. They were totally different. So it couldn't have been from the 13th or 14th century, has to have been from the 1st century, it has to have been, well, pretty much from exactly the moment that our Lord was crucified. So why was the 1988 study wrong? Well, according to lead author of this study, Dr. Liberato De Caro, he said that the fabric samples are usually subject to all kinds of contamination, which cannot be completely removed from the dated specimen. So, for instance, if the cleaning procedure of the sample is not thoroughly performed, the carbon-14 dating is not reliable. So the numbers are this is just a much more precise mode of dating. And it turns out, from the latest scientific study, the Shroud of Turin appears to be the sort of shroud that could have been the shroud of Jesus. I mention this whole story because I really like the Shroud of Turin, but because this is really scandalous for people. If you talk to a normie on the street, some agnostic, some atheist, you say, hey, what do you think about the Shroud of Turin, which is the image of which is totally inexplicable from contemporary technological advancements, at the time that it was seems to have been made, and which dates back to antiquity and which purports to be the burial shroud of Christ.
And I think he's going to pick up on something here too, which is, what better time for this discovery to kind of be made and be put into the mainstream than a period of time in which we are, at least in our society and even across the globe, is becoming entirely degenerate in nature, that you would thus then have God and Jesus, our Lord, to be revealing himself in much more profound ways. Now, I'm sure, scandalous is one way to put it, but I'm sure this will still be met with bunches and bunches of criticism. But I think it also goes alongside with when they found, the Ark back in Turkey. I believe this is about almost like 20 or 30 years ago at this point. And maybe it marks the fact that we truly are getting closer to a period of time in which it will be much more known to be good versus evil. At least that's, I guess, the way I'm viewing it. But again, it is something, and I think it should be something that I think even your average Christian should at least know and be aware of. And then also a great thing to bring up to people who maybe don't believe, to give them some insight into just how real this stuff is, as much as he said in his tweet, which is a lot of people just want, even those who believe, want a lot of this to just simply be an abstraction.
They would laugh at you. They'd say, oh, that's ridiculous. It was just made up. Whenever it first appeared on the public scene, it was just made up. It's all fake. These relics, they're all fake. The whole thing, it's all just like total nonsense, superstition, legends. But then you show them this study. You say, no, it's from antiquity. Whatever it is, it's from antiquity. And the image is a photographic negative. And we don't, how do you explain it? That's scandalous to people. It's scandalous even to some religious people. There are some people who would call themselves Christians who would say, oh, I don't believe in that Shroud of Turin. That's crazy. I don't believe in something like the tilma of Our Lady of Guadalupe. This was a Marian apparition in America. This was a miraculous image, appeared on a cloth that was worn by a peasant 500 years ago. This cloth should have broken down within 30, 40 years. It's still intact. Anarchists in the early 20th century tried to blow this thing up. They blew up the church. They didn't destroy this delicate shroud. In fact, there was a crucifix that was bent around it as if to protect it. The image that miraculously appeared, no one really knows what the image is made of. And there was a microscopic analysis done on the eyes. So it's this image of Our Lady. It's this image of Mary. And it's an image, the microscopic study looked in at the lens of the eye in the image and found out that the lens of the eye contours exactly as a human eye. And there's actually an image in the lens of the eye, which is the reflection of the room, apparently, when the shroud was when the tilma was shown. Things like the Shroud of Turin, things like the tilma of Our Lady of Guadalupe are really scandalous to people, and even to religious people, because they say, no, religion's an abstract thing. It's not about this cloth. It's not about this thing that happened at this date. It reminds me of 1 Corinthians. It says, for both the Jews require signs, and the Greeks seek after wisdom, but we preach Christ crucified, unto the Jews indeed a stumbling block, and unto the Gentiles foolishness, but unto them that are called, both Jews and Greeks, Christ, the power of God and the wisdom of God. For the foolishness of God is wiser than men, and the weakness of God is stronger than men. When you read a study like this and you say, oh, wow, this actually might be the miraculous burial shroud of Christ. In fact, that seems to be the most logical conclusion of what this is. Or the tilma. This seems to just be a miraculous image, because no one else can really explain it any other way. That seems to be the simplest explanation for it and the most persuasive. Then you start to think, oh, yikes, it might all be true. The claims that God makes in the Bible, the claims that the church makes, the guidelines that God has set down and that the church promotes.
That kind of very realized epiphany of fear of like, wait a minute. If that's true, it's like, where do you go from there? Especially for someone who may be agnostic, who may be atheist, right? Especially people who kind of beat the table and are like, I will not believe unless he shows himself, right? I won't believe, and they do in these manners, or like, they kind of essentially kind of test God. Like, if you're real, move that flashlight across the room, things of that nature. I think he's spot on here, and I think it's even going to speak to people who are in the religion already. Who kind of hold these kind of more cultural Christian positions and give less credence to the actual literal nature of what these things are. And I'm glad Michael Knowles picked it up, but I'll go ahead and let this play out.
Do this, don't do this. God saying, I want to be worshiped in this way and you want to live in this way. Golly, that might all be true. That is scandalous to people. That's scary to some people. That religion might not just be something floating around in your head, a matter of personal preference. There might be a right answer, and there might be a right way for you to live. And you might be called upon to use your reason, which is a distinguishing feature that reveals us to be made in the image and likeness of God. You might be required to use your reason to open your heart to faith and revelation and live in the right way so that you can know your God and you can flourish. And you might actually be convinced of that, or brought along the path to being convinced of that by things like a really old shroud. Yikes, maybe it's all real.
I think that's a great way to put it. And that will be the end of everything I did have to cover for today. Probably a little bit less than what I normally would have, just because I was no power. And then I had to get what was it called? I had to get I want to get a couple more videos off the ground as well and start pumping those too and get a couple more in. It says, oh my, 8 viewers. Yeah. Hopefully we can build from there though. And I do want to say thank you for everybody who came in and chatted as well. Donnie, Kukla, Just a Guy, Knights of Gideon, everybody else. I would like to at one point figure out how to get my memberships to actually work. But sees how when I got my my monetization revoked for not verifying my address, it's like it's still not there on my page. I'm not sure what's going on with that. Or maybe I'm just retarded and I can't figure it out. So who knows? But with that being said, Christ is King. Everybody had a good rest of your night. I appreciate you all for being here. And, look to this panel or look to this channel for similar content as well. And smash the like button if you enjoy it. And definitely share it with your friends if you think I did a good job. But again, I appreciate it. And I will see you all next time. Take care.